So, as you all know, we're running a two-stage ODU restricted procedure. Are people generally familiar with the requirements of using that procedure? So at this stage, we use a selection questionnaire initially to do a first sift, and from that we'll identify a much smaller pool of people to actually submit the bid to us during the next stage. So we ask for a limited amount of information at this first stage of the process to encourage as many people as we can to respond. So the themes here are what we're basically looking at testing during that first stage. We also ask for some case studies of where you've done similar things elsewhere. So we're looking at two case studies just so we know that we've got confidence to take those companies forward to the next stage and ultimately to work with them as a partner. Do you want to say anything more about those things?
Just the case studies in particular. What we're particularly interested in is about if you've had any previous experience of working with local authorities and potentially the use of any of the standard government funds for this, like BDUK, ERDF, so that we get that heavy evidence base necessary for us to be able to claim back the money. So that's what we're particularly interested in the case studies, who you've worked with in the past, what you've and the evidence base in which you've been able to ensure the certainty of delivery and the evidence for that.
If you haven't, for example, worked on BDUK, that's not an automatic blocker. If you can show us that you've had equivalent sort of experience working with other sort of public sector initiatives, then that should be fine.
I think that we've got to ask, hopefully, for both the business and the residential. If you've got a mix of those, that would be ideal. If not, again, it's not a blocker. It's just a breadth of experience would be useful.
So we want to encourage, because you'll see there's 5 different lots across the 5 Tees Valley areas. What we would like to do is to encourage people to work together, to come together in sort of maybe a consortium arrangement to ensure that we get maximum rollout as quick as possible. So we know we can't force people to take that approach, but we really would encourage you to consider how you can maximise your input and maximise your chances of success in winning one or more lots by joining forces potentially with somebody else in that market. So we've covered this already. At the next stage, we will basically be awarding on this criteria. So once we've got through this selection questionnaire process, we'll issue an invitation to tender with a lot more detail, as my colleagues have already explained. We'll have a draft contract for you to consider in there, and we'll set out in full what our award criteria will be. But it will basically be a combination of these 4 criteria here. So we're looking at how many premises you think you can connect onto full fibre, what's your approach, what's your methodology for doing that, what you think you can achieve, also how you will filter down those benefits and connecting those businesses into the residential field, the amount of money you're looking in terms of public subsidy, bearing in mind what we said earlier about the 40% match fund requirement. And also we look at social value for everything of any sort of important value, economic value to the area. So we're looking at 10% of the criteria around what you can offer to Tees Valley over and above the contract requirement. So if you have any experience of, for example, working with school children, taking apprenticeships, any of those sort of things, and there's a long list of examples of things that you might want to offer as additional social value in the tender documentation when you receive it. If any questions on that, just let us know. But that will be effectively the award criteria at the next stage. As we said before, we've approached this in 5 lots, but there's no restriction on how many lots you can tender for. Each one will be run as a separate contract. So it could be that one organisation or one consortium wins, the first 2, and another wins 3 or whatever. So there's no limit or restriction on how many you can tender for. And you'll need to submit the most economically advantageous tender in relation to each lot to win them all. So at the next stage, as we've said, we'll be issuing a lot more detailed information, because obviously you'll need as much information as you can from us to be able to work up a sensible tender. So we'll give you focus maps, we'll give you more detail on the businesses that we think should be targeted and where there's the business need. We'll give you information about what planned development we see coming forward in the Tees Valley in the next 5-10 years. And we'll give you information on the public buildings that you might want to consider as part of your proposal as well.